Well, yesterday was the general election in Spain, and it looks like a pretty clear victory for the center-left party there, which is the Socialist Workers' Party. Now, I know for us Americans that might sound like the name of a communist party, and yes, their colors are in fact red. But in Spanish politics, that is considered center-left because there is a party to the left of them. And also, it should be pointed out that they're not, despite their name, they're not really like communists. They don't believe in actual socialism. They typically just espouse social democracy, from what I understand. Which, if you've been following European politics, you might have realized that social democratic parties have been falling out of favor. People on the more further hard left have been gaining a lot of ground on them in recent years. In some places, I believe the Green Party now is polling higher than the Social Democrats, which would be very strange considering that the Greens were always sort of a more of a fringe movement of the left. But of course, there is no Green Party in Spain. Things are a little different there. They have their other big left party is Podemos, which is sort of like Die Linke from Germany. And so they're further left. They don't consider themselves social democrats. They're more along the democratic socialist, spectrum, meaning that they're a bit more in favor of the whole collective ownership part of Marxism, not just merely redistributing the wealth to, the voters or whoever they need to buy off on any given day. Surprisingly, however, this Podemos party, unlike the rest of the sort of alt-left parties in Europe, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, they actually lost seats in this election. The center-left party, the Social Democratic Party, actually has gained a significant amount of support in this election versus the last one, and it almost matches up perfectly with the amount of support that Podemos lost. This election, compared to the last one, Podemos got 7% less votes. Now, the Social Democrats in this election got 6% more, so you can kind of do the math. Now, I haven't been following Spain close enough to understand really why the Social Democrats would be gaining in this sense and sort of bucking the trend of Europe, but the right-wing parties are following the trend very closely with the rest of Europe. The right is very clearly fracturing in this election. The large center-right party, which was by far the largest party in Parliament after the last election, has now fractured, and the right is splitting their vote three ways between the mainstream center-right, sort of big tent People's Party. There's another party called Ciudadanos, which means citizens. And then you have the Vox Party, which is more of your AFD type of party. The Vox people are, from what I can tell, the only real Eurosceptics in the Spanish Parliament. They're very much Spanish nationalists, which is actually a phrase that has a lot of meaning. It's not just sort of a lip service thing to say, ooh, I like waving a flag. Now, in Spain, there are active separatist movements in various provinces, and the Spanish nationalists are very hardline against self-determination, greater sovereignty to the local governments, and they're certainly strongly against secession. Now, Vox did not gain any seats in the last election, so this time, though, they gained 10% of the vote and gained quite a few seats. Now, as you might imagine, that certainly hurt the center-right party, who lost over half of their seats. Now, unfortunately for the right's sake, unlike with the left, when the right fractures, the right parties typically don't want to form coalitions with one another because that makes people think of the rise of Nazi Germany. And of course, for those of you who are not necessarily read up on your history of the Weimar Republic, what ended up happening in the late 20s, I forget which election exactly it was, but it was right around 1930, the right parties in Germany fractured, and they were unable to form a coalition government without, they couldn't get a majority of the seats in the parliament without bringing the Nazis into the coalition. And there was a man in Germany who was a mainstream politician who, along with his party, decided to bring the Nazis into the coalition. and that's how the Nazis essentially got their foot in the door of the German government in the eyes of many people. And so people kind of blame that action of letting a far-right party into government as being analogous with Nazi Germany. So that's why you see this sort of apprehension in a lot of the European countries when it comes to letting in sort of far-right parties versus far-left parties. It's totally acceptable for like a center-left party to bring a communist party into their coalition in order for them to gain a majority. But for a center-right party like the People's Party to bring in a party like Vox, which is not necessarily neo-Nazi but just more strongly nationalistic, that would be considered to be beyond the pale of European politics. So therefore, when the parties fracture, that always benefits the left, because the left can always come together as far as public opinion is concerned. It's not considered taboo. Now, whether or not the parties can actually hammer out a coalition agreement is another matter. But as we've seen in Germany, which of course is where this memory of the Nazis is most pronounced, we've seen the CDU government, led by Angela Merkel, accept the Social Democrats into her coalition, the opposition party. She accepted them into government just to keep the AfD out. And the AfD is sort of analogous to the Vox party in this example. Now, the other right-wing party that is sort of a part of this split within the mainstream People's Party is as I mentioned, Ciudadanos, and they're sort of they're more centrist, I would say, than the Vox Party, but they are overtly, I would say, neoliberal and cosmopolitan. This is sort of the party for educated right-wingers. These are people who work in cities and wear a suit and tie every day, who want to vote for a party on the right, but they don't want to be embarrassed about it when they talk to their social democratic colleagues at work about it. And so the Ciudadanos party has the correct opinions as far as the mainstream is concerned on all the important issues, like they love the European Union, and they do like they like the flag. They're very they're patriotic. They like the flag, but they're not too patriotic. They're not to the point to where they love Franco or anything. They're probably not what we would consider nationalistic when compared to the Vox Party. And so that's about it. The Social Democrats are going to be in, and they're going to have an actual majority government. They have been governing as a minority government, which of course is considered unstable in a parliamentary system like this. So it looks like there won't be anything too exciting going on in Spain until the next election, assuming that the Catalans don't get uppity and try and secede again. But save for that, I probably won't have too many more videos on Spain in the near future. But if you got anything of value from this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and subscribing, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.